There, both of them. Good morning and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting for January 10th, 2024, which will now come to order. My name is Don Popple. I'm your chairman today. And our committee today consists of Mr. Barry Boyce, who is Councillor of Ward 5, Chris Bishop, and Gerald Walker. And the Committee of Adjustment meeting will now come to order. Today, we're dealing with three cases that are requesting a variance, and a notice to everybody that's here in attendance. The meeting will be streamed on YouTube and recorded. Note the recording will be linked to the municipal website following the meeting. I've introduced the committee, and we've got with us the Director of Planning, who is Jeff Isles, who is our secretary, or is our treasurer, and Adam Meyer, who is the deputy secretary treasurer. So don't get worried that there's a lot of money looked after, because there's not really that much. So it's the committee's responsibility to consider the information received to date regarding the requested variances and to hear and consider any comments or questions provided by these applications. Any variances granted by the committee must meet four tests, which are very clearly defined in the Planning Act, and the requested variance must be: one, minor in nature; two, desirable for the proper development of the land; three, comply with the general intent of the official plan and comply with the general intent of the zoning bylaw. Please note, if anyone wishes to be notified of the decision, please make a request in writing to the municipality. Does any committee member wish to declare a conflict of interest with any of these cases today? That be recorded as no. Any oral or written submissions received in advance of the meeting will be verbally read aloud at the time the application is considered. All persons who have pre-registered will have an opportunity to present or ask questions about the proposals. Please direct all your questions and comments to the chair. Each registered person will have up to 5 minutes to provide comments or ask questions. Once finished speaking, the meeting host will mute your microphone. That means you're done. Please state your name and relation prior to the application or prior to speaking. Okay. First order of business is to adopt the minutes for the meeting of December 13th. I need a mover and a seconder. Chris? Barry? Chris? Be it resolved, the minutes from the Committee of Adjustment meeting of December 13th be adopted. That's carried. First one. The first case that we're dealing with is file D13 MV 2023-30, be recorded as follows. There is a request for 3 variances, and it's in Harcourt Park, and the Harcourt Park hasn't granted the permission for this person to do this application. So you carry it from there, Jeff.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. Thank you. And just to elaborate, so the applicant, as you mentioned, hasn't obtained permission yet from the property owner to submit an application on their behalf. So staff are recommending that this file be deferred without discussion until the applicants obtain that permission. So it'll likely come back to the next meeting in February.
We need a mover and a seconder to defer this. Barry Boyce. Seconded by Chris. It resolved the committee's decision with respect to file D13 MV 2023-30 be recorded as follows. Section 5.2, to permit a shed to have minimum water setback of 7.3 meters or 24 feet, as opposed to the required minimum of 20 meters or 66 feet, is deferred. Variance of section 5.2 to permit a workshop to have a minimum interior side lot line setback of 0.38 meters or 1.25 feet, as opposed to required minimum of 1 meter or 3.28 feet, is deferred. Variance provision of section 5.2 to permit 3 accessory buildings plus one one-story building less than 10 square meters or 108 square feet in area, as opposed to permitted maximum of 2 plus one-story building less than 10 square meters, 108 square feet in area is deferred. All in favor? Motion's carried. So is Mr. Marshall here? Why don't you just pull up a chair up with us up here? You can just give us a quick synopsis of what you're looking for, and I'm sure we'll have some questions for you, and
Sure. Can you hear me okay, like this?
I can hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Actually, if you just pull it a little bit closer to you, you're better off. There you go.
how's that?
Okay,
All right.
Yep.
So this is subject for a new build that's been going on forever. It's specifically about the bunkhouse and the size of the landing on the bunkhouse. And how it came to be, I don't know if that's of interest, but we're requesting a jump in the minimum or in the size of the landing. Because when we started the project in 2016 and permits 2015, the maximum of 45 meters we thought was the bunkhouse size. And through the concrete, the project sat for a couple of winters because of issues that really would bore you. And how it started was two things. That the first winter we had inches of ice on that north wall. That scared me, so we decided, okay, we'll put a little overhang on it because I didn't think that'd be good for the siding. We had no idea what the weather was going to do to that big, huge, tall wall.
it wasn't, so it wasn't with us.
You know what? I don't know, have you guys been to the site?
Oh, no, we haven't
Do
been.
you want some photographs
Sure, if you got
with
some.
that? Yeah, this is my first time. I have no idea, so
Well, don't worry about that. We're all, we're all sort of the same word.
I did 4. I didn't know how many would be here. So the back wall is, if you look at all three, maybe I should start with why the building looks like this. That huge, it's like a lean-to is
Yeah.
for solar panels. We actually rotated from the original plan. We rotated the building 5.5 degrees because of what the solar people told us it should be. So that's the reason it looks like that. So that back wall, the north wall, it was just caked in ice, and we thought, okay, we need to put some kind of an overhang on it. So the problem was, I don't know anything about building rules, and we very strictly observed the limit of the footprint, which is what we understood was the main thing. And so it morphed from there. So, okay, we need to protect that wall a little bit from the weather. So then we put up we put up the landing the way it was, pretty much the way it was drawn. And it was, you basically walked up onto the landing and the door was right there. We should have moved the entrance door right to the back of the foyer that's in there, but we didn't know that. And it's a concrete structure, so making changes like that are difficult. So what happened was that it felt a little scary because you're up in the air and the stairs ended just before the door. So that was part of it. And when Hawk River did the service, do you have the plan there? So listen, if this is boring, I can cut to it. But I think I just want to take you on the journey why we did this. And it was based on the fact that I had no clue that the landing size contributed to the bunkhouse size. So when they did the services, they ran the services between the cliff and the building, which is a better way to do it. And the temporary landing that we put up was done before that, just to have access to the second floor. And basically now we would have to put footings down over top of the trench, and everything goes through that trench. power, sewage, communications, propane. So we said, okay, I'll just hang it off the wall because it's a 10-inch thick concrete wall with 2 mats of rebar. It's strong. And the other thing was the stairs stuck way out past the front of the building, more than I show actually in this drawing. It was even stuck out more, which we thought for snow clearing would be brutal. So we decided to hang the landing off the building. And it just would have looked ridiculous if the landing didn't go the whole length of the building. There's no great view because you stare at a cliff when you're on the landing, but it's an expensive optical thing when you're standing in front of the bunkhouse to have it like that. The building's 160 feet back from the water. It's certainly not an ideal place for a deck, but optically it looks 1,000 times better. And the way the stairs were reconfigured is 100 times safer because you know where the door is completely blocked off from the stairs this way. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So this is basically picture number 2.
Yeah.
Showing the end view.
Yes,
So this is the deck you're talking about?
Yes.
The veranda or porch
Yeah.
or whatever.
the
So this is what the minor variance is about, is to have that larger, and that runs the full length of the building.
yes, it does. Yeah.
Right, and it's cantilevered off of the building, not on the ground.
Correct. So the ground is free, so we'll have forever access to the trench.
So this is the way it looks today, right?
That's, yeah.
It's already completed and built.
Well, the
and
structure's
tightened.
there. If I'm not allowed to do it, I have to leave it on there. I mean, what we'll do with it.
Yeah, okay, but as we look at it today, you're basically done with it, except putting the top on and putting the stairs up the side of it. Is that
Pretty
correct?
much, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chris?
No, I think my thoughts is that, you're allowed 60 square feet in total for the building and the deck,
Oh, I thought it was 45.
45 plus. You're allowed.
Oh, there was something about, not to put a nail in my own coffin, but because we have this leaning roof on the back to protect the wall from weather. Apparently, my understanding is once we cover it, it changes the rules on the size, which I had also no idea.
Yeah, well,
about.
let Jeff tell us that story, but yeah, that's exactly what he's gonna tell you, I think.
Yes, thank you. So a deck and a veranda are defined differently in the zoning bylaws. So this,
That's what I found
you're
out,
right.
yeah.
So as soon as you put that roof over top of the deck, it became a veranda, which is like a covered porch. And the bylaw says that verandas are included in calculating the gross floor area of a private cabin. So if the deck wasn't covered, it wouldn't be part of the 45 square meters, but because it is covered, it is included in that 45 square meters,
So I just had no clue.
which is
about
the reason
this
for the
stuff.
variance today.
Sorry, which one is Adam? Anyways, that's what it is. It's just,
You have something, Barry?
No, other than I guess really so the 60 square meters, it's he's at the limit of the 60, he's not over the 60 square meters. But because it's a covered deck, I'm just making sure I got the facts straight, that's all, because it's covered. Then, yeah, it's not the 15 square meters becomes null and void. Cause it's not a deck anymore. So that's basically it, right? It's just,
Yeah, probably the best way to explain it is the actual indoor portion of the private cabin is only 38 square meters. The veranda is 22 square meters, but because it's included in the calculation, the total is 60.
and it doesn't matter whether it's closed in or not, does it? Because I know on the cottage, which is not the subject of here, we played around with there's a covered porch, there's a covered patio, not closed in. And I remember that was a big deal. And the reason we did it like that was because the whole property is on the edge of a cliff. So we couldn't move back. And if I could, I'd move it back way further. I actually prefer to be further back, but I know when we did that open covered porch so that we would stay within, what did Dan say? We stayed within the footprint of the original cottage that was torn down so that we didn't have to move it back. Does that make sense to you guys? And we still moved it back 8 feet. And we didn't tell you guys that, but we figured that wasn't a problem to move it further back. And so that's all I remembered from that, was that it wasn't covered. Now that we're talking about it, and that made a difference. If we would have covered it in, like, I don't know what that means, like windows, then we would not have met the original square footage. This is going back so far. It would not have met the original square footage, and we would not have been able to do it without probably a lot of meetings like this. So that's what we did, just to comply with that.
Yeah, and the definition of closed, if I may, through your chair, includes just even the ceiling.
It does. Okay, well,
Yeah,
it's got
it
to.
doesn't have to have walls, it doesn't have to have windows. As soon as there's the ceiling, that's considered enclosed.
Okay.
And it becomes included in the gross floor area of either the dwelling or the private cabin.
Right.
So in your instance for the dwelling, I can see that the dwelling is located within the water setback. You do have rights to redevelop it at that location without getting bigger or closer to the lake. You moved it further back, and because you didn't enclose it, it wasn't getting bigger. So sounds
I
like
see.
what was happening there.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that it was the footprint, whatever impedes on the earth is what defines all the rules, but I apparently don't know much about that.
My question is, to Jeff, in the event that, we grant this, variance and, this gentleman sells the property and the next owner comes in and closes that in, that makes it an illegal structure, is that correct? And would only get caught on an inspection or whatever? So I guess my question is, we don't have a way to prevent someone from closing that in and making an extra room unless it's caught on a further inspection of some sort.
Yeah, so there is risk. Thank you. There is risk, if you were to grant the variance today, that someone, even the applicant or a future owner, could come in and enclose that veranda with walls. And they would still comply with the bylaw because we'd be permitting 60 square meters today. If that's something you were concerned about, we could try and wordsmith a condition that says maybe the indoor portion of the private cabin cannot exceed 45 square meters. That way, the veranda, even though it's still 22 square meters, they can't enclose that. So we could wordsmith a condition if
I would have
The
no
committee
trouble with
would like
that. I mean, with this cottage has been built for the next 1,000 years and I do not ever plan on selling it.
Yeah.
But obviously, things can change, but
It's a lot easier to make a decision for you on something like this when you actually got the permit. So we do have situations where people don't bother to get the permit and then we're trying to sort it out.
for real, people build stuff without a
Shouldn't tell you
permit.
that, but yeah, but it's a lot
You're not
easier to go
joking,
up with
though.
somebody- a lot easier to make a decision with somebody who's cooperating with you rather than throw them up roadblocks against you, so.
Well, I mean, I don't, if we could put that in there,
I have
and
no
you're-
problem with
you're-
that.
He's willing.
And I'll undertake, I'll
I'm-
sign that I will never put one on.
Yeah, well,
No,
and
I'm in agreement, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
So you're gonna include that.
what do you think, Jeff? Is that?
Yes, that's something we can do. We can word it, the private cabin excluding the veranda shall not exceed 45 square meters, something along that lines, if that satisfies everybody.
That works for me.
There is one more proposed condition that I just wanted to make everybody aware of. First off, there were no comments received from anybody on this file. But the one condition that we are recommending is that no deck, patio, or balcony be permitted to be attached or within 2 meters of the private cabin. So
Sorry, say that again, please.
no, so it just says no deck, patio, or balcony are permitted to be attached to or within 2 meters of the private cabin. So the reason staff are recommending this is typically on your private cabin can be 45 square meters and have a 15 square meter deck attached for a total of 60 square meters. In this instance, they're going to have a 60 square meter private cabin. So we didn't want to have 60 square meters of private cabin plus an additional 15 square meters of deck outside.
Yeah, I'll sign
Not
that
to
in a
confuse
second.
the veranda with the deck. The veranda is the private
Yeah.
cabin. So
So-
it's just no deck beyond what you're proposing here.
So
today.
nothing else
no
other
problem.
than what you've got there right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you really need to see the property to know that you're so limited as to what you could, where you can put anything, because it's literally a cliff,
Yeah.
right? So, and
That's why they call it the Halibut Island.
I love it, but what, yeah,
Yeah, mover and seconder. Moved by Chris Bishop.
I'll second that. Chairman Dodd?
Great job.
So we got all those conditions in there then?
Yes, we will add that new condition after the fact.
no problem.
Yeah.
Let's move and seconded as a variance to section 3. Permit maximum gross floor area of a private cabin to be 60 square meters or 645.8 square feet, which exceeds the permitted maximum gross floor area of 45 square meters or 484 square feet. Granted. Carrie? You're good to go, but there is a waiting period, an appeal period. Whether somebody wants to second guess this,
Yes,
it's 20 days.
from
So
today.
Just don't do anything different for 20 days. And then
Yeah, I don't think the boys are gonna prefer to do this in winter, although this isn't really winter this year, but I mean,
It's coming, it's coming.
is it?
Yeah, winter's,
Is that the voice of experience?
yeah, well, for the next couple of weeks anyways.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
for your
Thank you.
experience.
So sorry, seriously, people actually build stuff without a permit.
Oh, yeah.
We'll try everything.
Do you want these things back?
It's just extra garbage for you.
Sure,
so
yeah.
I'll get 'em out
You
there.
did a lot of work.
We-
putting them together.
No, it's 5 minutes and then the printer did all the work out there.
So the third case is lands of Douglas and Elizabeth Davy Family Trust. Go right up here. Just bring us up to date with what you're proposing and we'll carry on from there.
Okay, the genesis of all of this was we made the mistake of wanting to buy our shore allowance. And this opened this can of worms. Basically, we found out after when all this was going on, that we had a deck that was not in compliance. A couple of things that had been built. Anyway, the bottom line is everything was there when we bought this cottage in 1995. So we haven't made any changes to it or done anything. So I guess what I wanted, I came into council at one point, the shore allowance, and they said, you have to go get variances on these issues. I've done a couple of things that were asked already to deal with, which I've done. I have taken down the tarp structure, that's gone. And I will, there's a shed apparently that's over the property line. I own both properties.
Yeah, I know that.
So honestly, I didn't even think it would be an issue at all, but I'll move that. I just can't do it until the spring, so.
But the thing is, if you don't, at some point in time, somebody will want to sell that property.
No, I understand. No, I
Probably your kids
understand
or
the
your
logic.
grandkids or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you don't get the shed moved now, it's just gonna be some stabbing in the back down the road.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I.
We're easier to get along with than most people. So.
Anyway, so the issue, I guess, that I've got mostly is just that everything that's there was there when we bought the cottage, and it was because my wife's cottage was next door, just how we wound up with the cottage next door. And she's been going up there since '74, and all that stuff was there for as long as she can remember. So that's about it.
Well,
So,
the gazebo that you're speaking.
okay, the gazebo I put on the deck. Now it's up on, off the ground. I guess that's my comment. I know the KLCOA sent out a letter saying that they were against the gazebo.
Well,
That's right.
it's because of the water setback.
No, I understand. That's the issue. The only thing I would say is if the gazebo's gotta go, it's gotta go. But it doesn't really affect the ground in any way because it's up on top of this deck.
Well, if you make the gazebo legal, you just meet the setback requirement. So can you move it?
And not really. I mean, it's on, there's a spot on the deck that's been sort of perfect for it, and that's why I put it there. I mean, I guess I could rebuild the thing somewhere way back.
We don't have to.
But we
way
wouldn't
back,
really
you gotta be
use it then. Pardon?
66 feet, isn't it? Is the
66
requirement 30 meters?
20
20 meters, yeah, 66 feet.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is, but I'll turn it over to the committee for the questions here. Chris, go ahead.
So we did have a similar case to this out Kinesis Lake, 4 or 5 neighbors down, exact same situation. They had a gazebo within the. In the water allowance, and we went back and forth and we figured out what we could try to do to make everybody happy. And the reality was they either had to move it or remove the roof. You could have the 4 posts and you can have your furniture there. It's the roof that is the problem. So you have 2 options. In my opinion, you can take the roof off or move the gazebo. And
Okay.
since we made a neighbor of yours do that, it would be pretty tough for us to say, no, you're okay. And it doesn't really meet the 4 tests, and also that the Kinesis Lake Cottage Association weren't in favor of it, so.
We can take
That's,
Yeah, I guess. That defeats the point of having a gazebo, but.
Some people put a tarp over it.
How
a
would
tarp,
that-
a removable tarp that you can take off
in the winter.
in the winter time.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I know it seems minor, but those are the rules and regulations that are in place
I
now.
don't think it's tarp as a structure.
Does that work, Jeff? I'd like hearing Jeff's comments here first. He's really the guy that knows what's going on. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, by the definition of the bylaw, even if you have a temporary structure that's roof structure, it is considered a structure. Is it something that the municipality follows up actively and enforces? Maybe not, but yeah, even if they were to have those 4 posts and put up something temporary for the summer, it still would not comply with the zoning bylaw.
I'm
Anybody
sorry,
else
can
got
you
any
just, what part of it doesn't comply with the zoning bylaw, the posts?
No, it would be the roof in this instance. So the posts are perfectly fine. And
Oh.
historically, the municipalities interpret it to allow posts and roofless structures, even like storage racks for canoes and stuff. But the second you put a roof on it and close it so that you can be used for habitation, that's when it becomes a structure.
For habitation.
Even habitation is just leisure. It's not necessarily.
Say you get kicked out or something.
Having dinner, having dinner.
You have somewhere
having a
to
beer.
go.
Yep.
But there.
Oh,
Okay, so the roof has to come off.
okay. We can do that.
Well, he's still allowed to put a removable roof on it, isn't
No, no.
it? Okay,
Yeah, not by the definition of the bylaw.
but that's where we're at. The problem we've had is that we've had to deal with several of these and
Sure.
And yeah, and I mean, being on council, we have been looking at possibly trying to allow, but in this case, like Kinesis Lake Cottage Association, they're against them. So I keep hearing conflicting stories, you know, I keep hearing people like yourself and lots of people in your different lakes, you know, want to have a gazebo or want to have a shed. But then again, you have Kinesis Lake Cottage Association saying that, no, they don't. So there's a little bit of,
Is the,
you know,
I guess where I'm struggling a little bit, and I mean, I understand what the bylaw is, and the bylaw is the bylaw. But I'm not really sure how it affects the shoreline in any way, shape or form, because it's not on the ground, it's up in the air. So even if it's gone, there's no impact on the ground, it's the same, either way, whether it's there or not. So that's what I'm, and I guess they're probably assuming that this thing's on the ground somehow, affecting the shoreline in some
Right.
way. which it isn't in this case.
I don't know what they're assuming.
Yeah, I
but
don't
yeah,
either, to be honest.
But, yeah, I get, I
And you
get
can't
your-
even see it from the lake, either, because there's a big trees in front of it.
Right, yeah.
So, no, that's, yeah, but we'll take the roof.
I
off.
believe a lot of that, is like a general bylaw that affects the appearance from the water.
Yeah,
That's where a lot of it has come from, not the erosion or that sort of thing. It's more
yeah.
visibility. If every 100-foot lot had a gazebo or a shed all the way along the lake,
Except you can't see it from the water.
but a lot of them you can.
Yeah, I know.
So it's a general bylaw that
Yeah,
just blankets the whole thing. You know, as, Mr. Bishop said before, we had a number of them, and some of them are, like, you couldn't see them, you have to walk through the bush to see them, but they're still
Yeah.
within the setback, so it's
Okay.
unfortunate, but that's the way it's written.
okay, so I'll take the roof off.
In the spring.
Someone care to make a motion? Joe, or?
Actually, before we
Well, this-
proceed, I just wanted to outline the comments and conditions so we can have open discussions. Sorry, before we proceed, I just want to outline the comments and conditions so that the applicants have a chance to discuss those with the committee. As already mentioned, a letter was received from the Kinesis Lake Cottage Owners Association. I think everybody's read it. They note that the Kinesis Lake plan is used as a guidance tool regarding comments for applications on shorelines. The plan reinforces the desire that Dysart enforce the bylaw, specifically the water setback portions of the bylaw, to protect the water quality of Kinesis Lake. So that was the only comment received. There are several conditions and there's a couple moving parts with this variance that I'll discuss after, but I'm gonna go through the conditions first. There's 9 of them, so bear with me and I'll try and go through them slowly. And if you have any questions, just feel free to interrupt.
Can,
So condition number 1, this variance applies to the dwelling, attached deck and gazebo as shown generally on the property sketches. Any encroachment beyond the variances granted today require a further application for a minor variance. So that basically is just tying the variances to the property sketch. Second condition, the County of Haliburton Shoreline Tree Preservation Bylaw applies. The injuring or destruction of trees within 30 meters of the high water mark is not permitted. Again, this is just kind of a general condition, just asking that you not,
yeah.
just ensuring that
that's
you're aware
fine.
that you can't remove trees.
We're not doing that.
Condition number 3, prior to July 1st, 2024, the shoreline vegetation buffer is to be renaturalized to the full depth of the water setback, consistent with the intent of the official plan, zoning bylaw, and site alteration bylaw. And I know the committee's discussed this condition in the past, so the
Can-
municipality recently passed some new policies regarding natural shorelines, and where impaired by past activities. The policy suggests that the shorelines be repaired to a natural state. You're still allowed to clear 5 meters around buildings, 3 meters around structures such as docks and decks and flagpoles and fire pits. But that's the recommendation today. Condition 4, during construction, proper site preparation and construction methods are to be used to prevent sedimentation of the adjacent lake. Sediment fencing is to be installed down gradient from the construction site. The site is to be properly stabilized immediately following construction to prevent erosion and sedimentation. In this instance, I don't believe you're constructing
there's no
anything, so that might be redundant. Condition 5, prior to the pouring of the footings, the applicant must submit confirmation from an Ontario land surveyor that the gazebo complies with the water setback and interior side lot line setback. Again, we ask for surveyors just to confirm the setbacks granted today, but you do have a survey, so I believe they've already been confirmed, so that would satisfy that condition. The next condition is the same, prior to the pouring of the footings, that the applicant must submit confirmation from a surveyor that the dwelling complies with the granted interior side lot line setback, and that the attached deck also complies with the setback. So there's 2 other variances being requested today. One to allow the deck to be closer to the side lot line and one to allow the overhang. So it's just to make sure that they comply with what was granted today. Condition number 7, the applicants must obtain building permits for the gazebo, the addition to the seasonal dwelling, which is the overhang, and the attached deck, as well as the lean-to to the garage. Condition number 8, prior to the pouring of the footings, the applicants must remove the tarp storage structure, which I the applicants have suggested it's already been removed. And condition 9, prior to the pouring of the footings, the applicant must remove or bring the vinyl clad shed into compliance with the zoning bylaw. And again, that's the one that's encroaching on the lot line, and it just needs to be 1 meter from the side lot line.
Oh,
1 meter, that's all?
well,
It
I
only
thought
has
it
to-
was 3.5 meters or something.
Only if it's used for habitation. So private cabins and dwellings need to be 4.5, but the shed
Oh,
only
1
has to be
meter.
1 meter.
Okay, so I can just, well, that's fine. That's good. Then that makes life a little easier for me.
So I do have a couple other comments for you, Chair, but before we move on to them, perhaps if you guys want to have any questions about the conditions, I'm happy to answer them.
Can I ask a couple of questions? Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
This prior to pouring the footings thing, I really don't understand what that's about. There's no footings being poured.
Most of these conditions are sort of a standard thing that has to go in everything.
Oh,
About half of them likely don't even apply to your situation.
okay.
So, yeah, don't, if you're not doing any construction anywhere, then most.
They say all of this has been there since
Yeah.
year one for us.
Yeah, typically variances when they're coming in, it's prior to construction, so
Right,
because we're trying to
that makes
legalize
sense.
existing structures, the
What-
prior to the pouring of the footings doesn't necessarily apply. I think the important thing is just that the rest of that condition will have to be satisfied, whether it's the removal of the tarp storage structure.
Okay, now
or-
the building permit thing. Is that just a question of getting a permit issued? Or do I have to do, does that mean I gotta go get drawings of these things or something? Or,
I will defer that to the building department because I'm not sure what they will require. They've identified to us that there wasn't building permits for the overhang or the attached deck.
Mhm.
It's possible you would have to submit some sort of drawing. I know when I did my deck at my own house, I hand drew my plans for my deck, and that was
and
sufficient.
I can kind of hand draw what's there.
Yes, that might be sufficient,
Figure
but I
it's
would,
lasted 30 years so far, at least since we've been there, and I can't imagine it's gonna collapse tomorrow.
they might not ask for something, but I can't tell you what they'll ask, but
Okay, and I just get that meeting at the desk here?
yep, that's right.
About that?
Yep.
Okay.
So just on that point, by getting a permit, that's gonna bring this into compliance, so they're legal to have there.
Okay,
And it's my understanding that if you have to replace that, now you can actually replace it. Because you've had a permit and you do now have a minor variance,
okay.
which allows it to be there. So going forward, it's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't
Option
mind
B
doing it.
is
It's
to
just,
tear it
I
off.
hate to say, I gotta go
Yeah.
and spend $3,000 on engineering drawings for something.
So-
and it-
The building permits we would need are for the deck. You mentioned the gazebo, but
Correct. The gazebo, because it's over 100 square feet or 108 square feet.
but if we're taking the roof off, does that?
But
still-
if that's denied, then you won't need a building permit for that. So,
Okay.
and that's the same with land surveyor. You're not gonna have to, we can remove that condition because you wouldn't have to verify its location if it's not gonna exist. So there's a couple, that was one of the things I was gonna mention to the committee after we discussed the condition, that there's gonna be some slight modification to some variances and some conditions depending on how they choose to proceed.
All right, and then the final question, I guess, relates to this, the shoreline thing. Exactly what does that mean? Right now, we've got a lawn, I suppose, out front toward the lake, which is about 30 feet wide. And the other 70 feet is all natural. So you're saying we got to get rid of that lawn?
So that's the
Again, it's been there
recommended
since
condition
day one,
today.
Since we've moved in, that was part of the appeal of the cottage.
That's the recommended condition. So council a few months ago passed a site alteration bylaw. And it recommends or requires natural shorelines to the full depth of the water setback, which is 20 meters in this case. There are exceptions within the bylaw. So you are allowed a 5-meter path to the lake. You're allowed to clear 5 meters around buildings that have building permits. So, and you're allowed to clear 3 meters around structures that are permitted by the bylaw. So as I said, 5 meters around the dwelling. You can
Okay.
clear around that. The deck and the dock, you can clear 3 meters around that. If there's a fire pit or a flagpole, they're also permitted in the setback. There's that other deck in your shoreline, you're allowed to have that, so it can be cleared 3 meters around that. So there's certain exemptions, But other than that, the policy says that the remainder of the shoreline
So
is
if I-
supposed to be left unmaintained,
So if I put the,
left to grow.
if I look at the 3 meters around that little deck and the 5 meters from the cottage, that's probably.
And also you can have a 15-foot wide path to the lake from your cottage.
15 foot?
Yeah, 5 meters, yeah.
Oh,
5 meters.
So
sorry.
doesn't that, I mean, that pretty much.
So by the looks of what you've got, with the pictures I'm looking around here, you might have to just let nature take over a little bit on each side here, just a little bit here.
We've done that on the one side already. It's
Right.
grown in probably 10 feet. from when we
Right,
first
yeah,
got the place.
Yeah, so
So.
I think you're not,
and we
I'm
planted a
not
bunch
there
of stuff
looking at it
around.
physically, but what I'm seeing in the pictures, it kind of looks like it's not crazy. So,
And we don't fertilize it or anything. like that.
perfect.
It's mostly
Yeah.
clover and weed.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true.
And the more natural vegetation that you can get right near the shoreline itself. the
Yeah, we
bigger-
planted
so-
lots and lots of dogwoods around
Yeah, we
and
did the,
white pines.
Yep,
Because the Kinesis Lake Cottage Owners Association used to do a tree planting program.
right, yep,
Which we always bought
yep,
a ton.
little twigs from.
yep. So I know some of these things that we're throwing at you here is a little bit scary at times when you first hear them, but then once you get through them all, it
Yeah.
does,
Okay, so,
it's not.
so we removed the tarp thing. We'll get the building permits for those 3 things. We'll move the shed in the spring. Roof off the gazebo. You guys want to get rid of the gazebo? What's the point in having it?
So I guess we better go through the next, what do we got? How many? Is there 4? Yes. Or no?
I did read all the conditions and you're right. By reading through these conditions, it sounds like you've already satisfied a lot of them. So the surveyor confirming the setbacks, you have a survey that confirms the setbacks. The buffer, it's quite possible that you don't have to plant anything or let anything regrow if you can satisfy those 5-meter buffers around the buildings. It's something you just might have to draw on a piece of paper.
I was just gonna say, how do I do that?
You
Do I
can just draw it on this
Somebody have to
and
come in
show
and
your
look at
path.
it, measure it all, or,
Yeah, this would be a good,
and just mark it on that?
yeah, because this is a survey and you can scale it. So you can
Okay.
use that scale bar, which shows you what 5 meters is, and
Yeah.
then you can say, draw that around the building, take the 3 meters, draw it around there. And those are the areas that you'll see what are.
Does it
supposed to be
show
clear.
where it, I don't think it shows though where the forest ends and our lawn starts, does it? I don't think. does.
No, it doesn't
I can
show.
mark that. Easily.
So those conditions, for the most part, sound like they could be satisfied. You've removed the one structure, so it's satisfied. The building permits is the one, and then removing the other structure. So it was a lot of conditions to read, but it sounds like most of them have been satisfied.
Or will be at least. Okay.
We're going to deny the review. Unless it goes back, correct? Is that correct?
Correct. Either take the roof off
That
or move.
sounds like what the
Take the
committee's
roof off
wanting.
or
We
move it.
make that motion, Chris, huh?
Sure.
Is there a timeline this has to be done by? Like, can I wait till the spring to
Of
do that?
course.
Sorry?
We can
Sorry, I
put
just
that
wanted to
in
see if there was a
as part of the
timeline.
condition, Jeff, that they have to have it removed by such and such a date. Is that how we work around, or is that a building thing that we have to?
There's no work order on this file, is there? So by denying it, the committee would just be basically saying it's not permitted to be there. Unless there's enforcement, there's really no timeline imposed on it to when to remove it, but the committee could say that the gazebo should be removed by June 1st or something like that.
But we don't have to say that, okay.
So-
But in saying that, next time they come up to look at what,
It better be-
better be gone. Yeah.
I think they have to apply for a permit for the deck, right? So a building official is gonna go there, and if the roof is gazebo still in place, that's almost the enforcement at that point. So he's not gonna get his building permit. until
First of all, we have
So it's
to,
already in place.
we haven't even dealt with the deck yet, right? So,
And that's a good
yeah,
point, Jerry. So you might want to include a condition if that the gazebo is to be removed by whatever date you guys decide. That way they can still go ahead and get their building permits.
My point was, though, is that they shouldn't have to put a date on it because he won't get his final inspection on his deck until it's removed. Because the building official is gonna see the gazebo. So if it's not removed, he was not gonna get a permit for his deck. Right?
We're going. Now we're going. It has to bring the deck into compliance before you can do anything else, is that correct?
So the variance today is to bring the deck into compliance, but you're right, there is a condition to get a building permit for the deck and the overhang. So it's quite possible that the building department, the gazebo might jeopardize those building permits. So it's something, if you're inclined to let them to keep it till spring, that you might want to include a condition, just that way the building department knows that they have till June 1st to remove that. And then they can still go ahead with their building permits. It
Well,
won't
that-
impact that.
Yeah, but
Can
my
we-
point was, is why add more stuff to this? It's already, we have rules and regulations and a department going there to do this, and they're gonna catch that. So why would we write more in when it's already, the building official is gonna go there for the permit? And if the gazebo's still there, he's not gonna get a permit.
Which is true, they are,
Right.
but they do have enforcement capabilities, so they could follow up on that.
So then why would we write something in if it's already, it's already covered? Just adding more stuff.
Also too, they have a shore road allowance application and that won't go forward until the gazebo is removed.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I had an emergency that came
Mhm,
up and I had to
mhm.
report it to,
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I had an emergency that came up and I had to leave, but by 11:45 here today, so you'll have to excuse me from the rest of the meeting.
Okay, well, the three of us,
Thank you. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
So in all, so just to go back here a little wee bit, so the variance A is really, we're gonna say no gazebo, so then B becomes irrelevant then too, actually, right?
And that was one question I was gonna pose to the committee. So if the committee's inclined to deny the gazebo and the water setback, the applicants are also requesting a variance to allow the gazebo in the side lot line setback. If it has to move anyways, do they still want to grant that variance at 70 centimeters from the side lot line as opposed to 1 meter? Or if it's gonna be moved anyways? I guess my question was, how does the committee want to address that side lot line setback? You can still approve it, and wherever he moves it to, or they move it to, could be still 70 centimeters as opposed to a meter.
Are you planning on moving this gazebo or you really don't have? Okay, so if you're gonna take it down, then B is
Is your
irrelevant.
lot fairly flat? I'd be surprised if you couldn't move that. wouldn't you?
Well, I guess what we're saying, if you wanted to, if you want, yeah, so you're not worried, right? So you're really not worried about moving it? No, okay, all right, good enough. Well, then,
So we have to
see-
deny it.
well, we're gonna deny it, or I'm gonna make a motion.
Well, if you're gonna deny that, we might as well deny the side yard too at the same
Yes,
time.
it becomes, yeah, irrelevant, yeah.
And what about the C variance, C part of the variance?
Yes, we're on to that one now.
And staff had no concerns with variances B, C, or D, but B is, as you noted, is not necessarily relevant anymore if they're gonna remove it. But C and D, staff don't have any concerns with. But I did want to bring up a note. So right now, the applicants are requesting a variance to permit the dwelling to have a side lot line setback of 2.9 meters as opposed to 4.5 meters. And staff have no concerns with that. But the next variance says that is a variance to permit an attached deck to extend 4 meters into the side lot line instead of 0 meters. So right now, the measurement for that deck extension is where the dwelling's supposed to be. So if the variance for the seasonal dwelling is granted, the deck will actually only extend 2.33 meters instead of 4 meters. So I'm just recommending that be altered to say that the variance is granted at 2.5 meters instead of 4 meters. It legalizes it still in the same location. It just changes where the measuring point is started from.
So that really means if you guys,
Is that item C you're talking about?
It's kind of C and D. Does that make sense? So right now,
You know, no, it's,
it's hard for me to explain.
no, it really in the long and short of it is it's not gonna really change anything for you. It's actually gonna, it makes the whole situation a little better, actually. But it's just a little, it has to be
It's a
done.
clerical administrative change. So here's your deck. It's going 4 meters into the setback. As soon as we grant the setback to the dwelling, the measurement's actually gonna start from here as opposed to here. So instead of going 4 meters, the deck, it's actually gonna only go 2.33 meters from the new location of the dwelling. So I'm just suggesting that it be adjusted to. Yeah, so it's not gonna change the location of the deck. You're gonna be allowed to keep the deck there. It's more of just a clerical matter of where that measurement is being
It makes
taken
it a little
from.
bit easier for us to grant that last thing, actually.
Cause if it was 4 meters from, it's 4 meters the deck from the dwelling now, but if it's 4 meters from the overhang, it actually goes onto the neighbor's property. So it's actually only 2.33 meters from that overhang. So that's my only recommendation.
Is that for item D?
Correct. That would be for item.
So it's to extend how many meters? 2.3?
2.5, just to give them some wiggle room, so.
How many feet's that? Only God knows that. Can you figure it out? 2.5 meters. 3 2s are 6, 3 5. What is it?
8.2.
We've got a blank here, so that's why we're
8.2 feet.
8,
8.2.
8.2 feet?
Yep.
Okay, so just as to give a quick synopsis, we're gonna deny the request for A and B, correct? Okay, so all that means if he does want to comply, he just has to meet the setback.
So.
If you want to keep the gazebo and comply, you gotta move it back or do whatever you have to do. But if you went and got a building permit, they'd tell you that exact same thing before you ever build it. So, yeah,
Do we have to make a motion on each individual one, or can I make a motion on all 4 at one time?
You can make a motion to proceed. But they do have different decisions, so you might want to make a motion on one at a time.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we deny A
yes,
and
And that's the setback, the water setback for the gazebo.
keep going.
I'm gonna make a motion that we deny B.
Yes,
And that's the side lot line setback for the gazebo.
yes,
I'll make a motion that we accept C.
see,
And that's the side lot line setback for the dwelling or the overhang.
And I'll make a motion that we accept with the changes that Jeff has just discussed,
D.
with the measurements on.
2.5 meters or 8.4 feet,
Yes,
granted. Okay. Sorry,
Like to, just for a quick discussion is condition number 3, which is the reforestation or the replanting.
Yep.
Which we've had a number of existing cottages in come up and that we've eliminated or taken that condition out of it. And I'd recommend that we do that on this file,
what's the number of that condition?
number 3.
That's condition number 3. So
Well,
Committee member Walker has made a motion to remove that. So just like any vote, to take two people to agree to have that removed.
in this case, I think I'll vote to remove that because I believe that if you guys did that map and everything that, meters around this is a bit, you're gonna meet it anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm okay with that.
okay.
So we'll remove condition number 3.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, the variance is section 5.2 to permit a gazebo to have a minimum water setback of 11.2 meters or 36.7 feet. As opposed to the required minimum of 20 meters or 66 feet is denied. Carried. Variance to section 5.2 to permit a gazebo to have a minimum interior side lot line setback of 0.7 meters or 2.3 feet. As opposed to the required minimum of 1 meter or 3.28 feet is denied. Carried. Variance to section 5.2 to permit a seasonal dwelling to have a minimum interior side lot line setback of 2.9 meters or 9.5 feet, as opposed to the required minimum of 4.5 meters or 14.7 feet granted. And a variance to section 3.7A to permit an attached deck to extend 2.5 meters or 8.4 feet into an interior side lot line setback, as opposed to permitted maximum of 0 meters is granted. It's carried.
And that condition number 3 is removed.
Correct.
Moved and seconded that this meeting now be adjourned at 11:55. Thank you for your attendance.